Early ASP applications were configured by using a section of the registry that was set aside called the metabase. We set all these things through the IIS administrative component. In ASP.NET, there's been a considerable change here, and this is really a welcome change. All the configuration files for your application, or 99% of them, are contained in XML-based files within the web application itself, and I will show you these in just a few minutes. But these files are, first of all, since they're in XML format, they're human readable. Now, right quick, before we go any farther, if you're not familiar with XML, the Extensible Markup Language, I would strongly suggest that you go out and grab you a third-party book and begin to read up on this thing. Now, if you absolutely have no clue what it is, go teach yourself XML in 21 days or whatever, and just get acquainted with it. XML is everywhere. If you're not using it right now, you will be later. And just as information here, anytime data is moved around in the .NET framework, from one server to another, from just anywhere, it's always passed in XML format. And so XML, again, you're going to hear about it soon if you haven't already. So you do need to dig into this and see what it's all about. But anyway, our XML files, I'll show you one in just a minute. They're human readable. They're easily configured. You can look at these things and almost just intuitively figure out how to write something into them. Now, there are two types of configuration files in an ASP.NET web application. First of all, there's machine.config. And then there's web.config. And this is mainly the two places that you're going to go to make configuration settings. Now, machine.config is a server-wide configuration file. Any change you make here will affect every web page or every web application or every website on that web server. Web.config is an application-level configuration. Now, there's one of these in the virtual root of every web application. And you can have multiples. Now, the web config overrides the machine config. So let's stop and think a minute. If we turn on a setting or make a setting change in machine.config, that's going to affect every web page, every website on our server. But then if I go into an individual website and make a change in its web config file, that will overwrite the machine config that's coming down from the machine level. Now, we can have multiple web configs in subdirectories within our website. So if you think about this, let's say at the server level up here, we do a configuration in our XML file and we turn something on. Then underneath that, down at a virtual directory for a web page, we turn that off. Then this will override this. But then, let's say farther down the line in that subdirectory, we turn it back on. Then the web pages that are in this directory right here will have that turned on. So it basically overrides down. So this overrides that, and then this overrides that. If you want to think, the closer you get to the user, is where is the configuration that sticks and works here. Okay? So config files overwrite previous config files. Now let's take a look at a config file. I'm going to go out to visualstudio.net, open this up, and let's take a quick look at a config file. I'm going to go into our example cache that we used last night. And I guess I should say previous video. And when we get here, you're going to notice that there are some a config file. There's a config file out here, and I'm going to show you the web config file. Now, for your information, the web config and the machine config have the same settings and same characteristics, but notice right here is our web config file. Now this is the one that's in the virtual root of this particular website. So if I double click this and open it up, you're going to see that this thing is in XML format. I'm going to close this so we can see it. Notice it's an XML file, version 1.0, and then our encoding information there. And configuration is the root tag. Now, if you'll notice, I'm going to scroll down to the bottom. Everything here is contained within these configuration tags. Then we have a system web tag, and then we begin to set here. Here's the compilation section. And notice if we're going to open and close a XML tag in the same tag, we use a little slash at the end of our tag itself. But notice this is setting our default language to VB. Now, how do you think we would change this to C#? We would just simply type CS, and now our default, once I save that, would become C#. Notice there's a lot of these. I'm going to go through them in the next video, what you have out here and what these different things mean. Notice here authorization. We'll look at this when we look at security a little later. Right now we're allowing all users to access this website. And notice we can allow or deny certain users. And they're showing you how to do that, how to allow users and roles to access your web app. If you remember the trace logging, application level trace logging, you notice these comments are put in there by Microsoft so we can tell what's going on here. Notice here's a trace statement that we changed earlier in our course to set up page level tracing on the entire application. So a lot of things going on. Now there is a machine config that's at the absolute root of all of our web pages, and it sets these machine-wide settings that are overridden, for example, by this particular web config in this in the virtual root of this web page or this web application. So that's what it looks like. Be aware, these things are case sensitive. Okay, if I type something in here, if I go in and change this and I make this C right here a capital C, then when I compile, I will get an error when I try to run my web page. So understand that XML is case sensitive. We can't be as sloppy with it as we were with HTML sometimes. So that's configuration files. In the next video, we're going to go through and see what configurations we can set inside these configuration files.